Regulus Quarterly Financial Astrology Forecast by William Stickevers.
So this all connects to the Fed, and this is Powell's potential departure. So right now, since Jupiter squared Saturn in June, we've heard intimations by President Trump where he has basically stated that he wants Powell out. And Powell's term is not up until May of 2026, right? And basically, Trump said it doesn't matter. We cannot wait to May of 2026. He does not do what we need him to do to repair the economy. He's playing politics. It's very clear that, the Fed is very anti-Trump. They have policies that completely go against what Trump is trying to achieve. Whether you agree with Trump or not is a whole different matter, right? That is irrelevant. What's relevant is the fact this is the first time in history that you have an institution, and you have to remember the Fed is not a bank. It's not a reserve of any kind. It's not federal. It's a banking cartel of private bankers that basically are telling the president of the United States, it doesn't matter. We are going to defy your policies, and made that very clear. So Trump is doing something unprecedented and saying, I am going to fire you and your entire staff. This has never been done since 1913. And as a result, gold prices are going absolutely parabolic as the White House says Trump is likely going to fire Fed Chair Powell. And this is why gold and Bitcoin have been telling us that for months now. So everything right now with what's happening going into this fiscal quarter has to do with whether Trump fires Powell. Now, based on what I am seeing here, when I look at the Federal Reserve operations chart and I see the current transits, I notice one thing. Transiting Uranus ingressed into Gemini, hitting off Mars right in the 12th house, right? So that's the first thing I'm noticing here. As soon as we saw that ingress, bang, hits right on that Mars. And so the bigger issue is two things. The president forcing the issue. But really, ironically speaking, if we look at the Uranus-Mars, the Uranus opposing the Mars in the 12th house would basically say a lot of disturbing revelations are coming out about the Fed. And the Fed has no one to blame but itself, particularly Jerome Powell and his predecessors, right? Because the U.S. is in a very dire fiscal predicament, and the explosion of U.S. debt over the past 2 decades since 2008 basically made possible the very tools the Federal Reserve deployed, like, for example, the zero interest rate policy, quantitative easing, etc. All of these tools were used from 2008 through around 2015. So what we've seen is with these policies, right, they're stimulative, but they're only stimulative short term and laid the groundwork for a physical Leviathan, right? A Godzilla. This is Godzilla coming out from the ocean, right? This is the nuclear device that triggers Godzilla to come out of the ocean. And basically what we're seeing now is the fact that inflation expectations are becoming unanchored. There's market skepticism about the Fed's credibility. There's potential policy reversals under public pressure, political interference in monetary decisions. All of this is being revealed here. And so I would say the probability is very high we're going to see a new Fed chairman, right? And we have a September eclipse here. Let me just bring that here. So we have this eclipse flashpoint, mounting financial losses inside of the Fed. So we have this eclipse in September. So the partial solar eclipse of September 2025 is going to draw out a number of things, along with the fact that Neptune entered Aries, etc., is that the Fed's interest expenses are now exceeding earnings. Its $6 trillion bond portfolio that it sits on, a $1.1 trillion in unrealized losses, and many are comparing the Fed's trajectory to the Silicon Valley Bank of 2023 collapse caused by duration mismatch in underwater bond holdings. Interesting, right? This mismatch being triggered, and if you would think of underwater, the 12th house has very much to do with something being underwater, right? The 12th house is sort of a watery house, but when you see Mars in the 12th house, you could see something that's underwater like a bomb that gets triggered, right? And so it's not obvious until the bomb explodes, right? So an underwater bomb that gets triggered by a boat or a ship When it explodes, it becomes very obvious, but it's in stealth mode prior to that. So here's the thing, and I want to bring this up here. This is very important. This chart here, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I just want you to understand where we're at, basically revealing the balance sheet crisis. If you look at this chart from the Bank of America Global Research, it depicts the interplay between U.S. monetary policy via the inverted federal funds rate, as you could see here in the light blue, and in the dark blue, this is the Dow Jones Industrial. And if you see, the Fed funds rate is showed inverted. So basically what this means is that the upward movements in the blue line indicate falling interest rates. Basically, monetary policy is easing. They're loosening up on the money, while the downward movements signal rising interest rates and monetary policy is tightening, right? And you notice how the stock market's very correlated with monetary easing, monetary tightening, monetary easing, monetary tightening. You could see there's a lot of correlation here. Now, we could see here, this is where we're at right now. This is the monetary tightening, and this is what's concerning Trump, because we have government and fiscal deficits exploding. And at the same time, there's been monetary tightening, and interest rates have continued to go up or remain relatively high. So we see this happening here in the stock market over time, going on the downside. So you could see that correlation here. So now, here's the thing that you have to remember. This eclipse is showing very clearly right now that we're going to see major reversals. So what does that mean? That there's going to be a lot of political pressure on the Fed. And it's going to be very similar to Nixon's influence on Fed Chairman Burns back in the 70s, right? Where Nixon called for a drastic rate reduction to 1% amid ongoing economic debates, which tempted the Fed to do excessive monetary easing. And that sparked an asset boom, but it also reignited inflation. So we could see the same thing happening now in 2025, where we have a new Fed chairman. We see the current Fed chairman get ousted by Trump. He puts someone in that's basically going to do Trump's bidding. They lower interest rates significantly, and then we see the stock market boom, right? You see the stock market boom, everything goes up. It's happy days are here again. And it basically sets up for major inflation a year later. So a year later, you have major inflation like we saw back in the 60s. So the short-term spark or the short-term asset boom, right, reignites inflation in a very serious and significant way 12 to 18 months later.
To watch the full forecast webinar and gain in-depth astrological insights on global markets, key economic events, and investment strategies, go to williamstickevers.com and register for the Regulus Quarterly Financial Astrology Forecasts today.